Waters over comments that he says incited violence. What could this mean for her powerful committee position? Former President Donald Trump discusses a wide range of issues on Fox with Sean Hannity. Trump gives his biggest hint yet about his future plans. Arizona becomes the latest state to ban vaccine passports. This as a WHO panel recommends against using the passports as a condition for international travel. Texas police look into the cause of a deadly crash involving a Tesla vehicle in Houston. Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his cars are not at fault. Congresswoman Maxine Waters is facing criticism for her comments over the weekend. The House's top Republican wants to censure her, and if it passes, she could lose a powerful committee position.
House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy says he'll introduce a resolution to censure Congresswoman Maxine Waters over comments she made that he says incited violence. He told Fox News she has a pattern of this behavior and it demands action.
To have censure simply takes the majority of the House. But what could happen if this was to pass, because of the Democrats' rules, she would lose her chairmanship of the Financial Services. So maybe then she would learn once and for all there is no value in violence.
Over the weekend, Waters attended a protest in Minnesota following the death of 20-year-old Daunte Wright. She said if former police officer Derek Chauvin isn't found guilty of murder for George Floyd's death, protesters should stay on the street, get more active, and get more confrontational.
There's lots of law in this, Your Honor.
Chauvin's lawyers argue that her comments had prejudiced the jury and would form the grounds for a mistrial. The judge denied the request, but he said they could submit press articles about her comments for an appeal, and it might end up overturning the whole trial. The judge said he wished elected officials would stop talking about the case disrespectfully so the judicial process could play out. In response, Waters told a CNN reporter, "The judge says my words don't matter," and she falsely claimed the judge did not say her comments may be grounds for appeal. She's also dismissing Republican accusations, telling the Griot she's a nonviolent person and that Republicans are just trying to denounce Democrats. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she doesn't think Waters should apologize for her comments.
The trial of former police officer Derek Chauvin has concluded, with both sides wrapping up their arguments. Now it's up to the jury to deliberate and come to a decision. NTD's Christina Kim gives us key moments from the closing arguments.
The prosecution said Chauvin's actions weren't policing, but murder.
It's exactly what you saw with your eyes. It's exactly what you knew. It's what you felt in your gut. It's what you now know in your heart.
Slisher said Chauvin showed indifference to Floyd's pleas for help.
George Floyd's final words on May 25, 2020 were, "Please, I can't breathe." And he said those words to Mr. Officer. He said those words to the defendant.
Derek Chauvin is being charged with second-degree and third-degree murder, as well as second-degree manslaughter. If convicted, he faces up to 25 years in prison for the harshest crime. The defense presented their closing arguments for over 2.5 hours. Attorney Eric Nelson reminded the jury that it's up to the prosecution to prove that Chauvin is guilty beyond reasonable doubt.
The state has failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. And therefore, Mr. Chauvin should be found not guilty of all counts.
Nelson said it was nonsense to argue that Floyd's heart disease and drug use didn't play any role in his death. The prosecution argued that Floyd's cause of death was a lack of oxygen. And he said the prosecution focused on the 9 minutes and 29 seconds of the infamous body cam footage, but that doesn't tell the whole story.
This was an authorized use of force, as unattractive as it may be. And this is reasonable doubt.
Nelson points to the fact that Floyd was acting erratically and resisting arrest. The jury will deliberate and come to a conclusion on this issue. They can choose to convict Chauvin on all, some, or none of these charges. Christina Kim, NTD News.
We'll soon have a verdict in the Chauvin trial. Minneapolis and cities across the U.S. are increasing security precautions to prepare for potential unrest.
Fences, razor wire, and concrete barricade are installed at police precincts in downtown Minneapolis. National Guard troops have been deployed. With jury deliberations in Derek Chauvin's trial this week, Minneapolis and other U.S. cities are preparing for further protests and riots. In the first 3 days of last week, about 140 Minneapolis businesses were damaged. Starting this Wednesday, Minneapolis public schools will move to remote learning as a precaution. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki didn't say whether there are preparations regarding the use of the National Guard, but said there's a range of conservations about how to ensure the space for peaceful protest. In the nation's capital, the D.C. government put in a request to the National Guard over a week ago.
We have a request into the Guard. Chief Conte has also put our police force on 12-hour shifts.
The Army says it is preparing to approve the request, and the final numbers could be a couple of hundred forces. Lin, NTD News, Washington, D.C.
Former President Donald Trump went on Fox's Sean Hannity, where he discussed a wide range of issues, including the border, the 2022 midterm elections, and he hints at his own plans for 2024.
Fox's Sean Hannity asks Trump what are the chances he'd run for president again. Trump says, "I'm looking at it very seriously, beyond seriously." He says it's a long way off and too early to announce anything. Trump says he's focused on 2022 elections in the House. When he's asked if Republican candidates should run on his Make America Great Again agenda, he has a simple answer.
If they want to win, yes. We've expanded the Republican Party.
Trump says Republicans were projected to lose 25 seats in the House, and instead they gained 16. He says the candidates he endorses have a strong record of winning elections.
When we endorse them, it means something, not just for the primaries, but for the general election. So we have great people running.
Trump takes aim at President Joe Biden's performance.
And I don't know if Joe knows what's going on with it, because I think you have a cabal. You have a group of people that are sitting around a table just saying, do this, do this, do this. They're giving him these things to sign. It's hard to believe now.
Trump says the Biden administration is trying to play down the border crisis. He says it's a horrible situation and it could destroy the U.S. And he says all Biden had to do was to leave it alone. Trump says voters are going to notice things getting worse under the Democrats, and that Republicans have a great chance to take back the House in 2022.
President Biden met with a bipartisan group of 10 Congress members to continue negotiation on the infrastructure bill. It's the second bipartisan talk Biden's hosted since announcing his ambitious plan. But as Republicans call for a reduced plan, those on the far left in Biden's party are pushing to expand social welfare parts of the plan. NTD's Melina Wisecup has more.
Biden, alongside Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, spoke with 4 Republicans, 5 Democrats, and 1 independent on Monday.
Number one, what should be included in the package. Obviously, I put a lot in the package. I think it all should be included. And how to pay for it.
Republicans are resistant to including things like paid family leave, increasing child care, and hundreds of billions dedicated to affordable housing projects.
And then you add all the other stuff they have tried to consider into the definition of infrastructure. It is a massive expansion of the government, financed on the backs of the American taxpayers with taxes that will hurt the economy.
Senator Thune joined Biden in the first bipartisan negotiation talk last week. He argues the plan puts more funding towards electric cars than it does roads, bridges, waterways, and airports combined. It's unclear just yet if they've made any negotiation breakthroughs after Monday's meeting. None of the Congress members stuck around to answer questions after it was over. Republicans will outline an infrastructure plan of their own. West Virginia Senator Shelley Capito leading the push to slash the package by more than a half, proposing a bill between $600 billion and $800 billion. While Republicans are working on a bill to shrink the package, the far left wing of Biden's party introduced a bill to expand his plan.
It's just not enough.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and other New York Democrats say Biden's $40 billion for public housing in the plan isn't enough, and they want to double it. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Bernie Sanders just unveiled the Green New Deal for Public Housing Act. It would spend $100 billion over the next decade on housing projects. This complicates the talks on infrastructure, adding other factors for Congress to navigate an agreement. Melina Wisecup, NTD News.
Democrats are considering splitting Biden's infrastructure plan into 2 smaller bills. One would target traditional infrastructure, and the other would include policies that Republicans have resisted, including social welfare projects. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi supports this approach and says she wants both bills to pass through the House by August. Former Vice President Walter Mondale died Monday. He was 93 and served under President Jimmy Carter from 1997 to 1981. The death of the former senator, ambassador, and Minnesota Attorney General was announced in a statement from his family. No cause was cited. Mondale was a liberal icon, having lost his own bid for the White House in 1984 against President Ronald Reagan. It was one of the most lopsided presidential elections ever. On Election Day, he carried only his home state and the District of Columbia, winning just 13 electoral votes to Reagan's 525. While on the campaign trail, Mondale bluntly told voters to expect a tax increase if he won, a decision that helped define the race. Mondale was born January 5, 1928, in Ceylon, Minnesota, the son of a Methodist minister and a music teacher. His wife, Joan Mondale, died in 2014 at age 83 after an extended illness. Senator Josh Hawley introduces another antitrust bill aimed at big tech. This one would ban Amazon and Google from running an online marketplace and selling goods on that marketplace at the same time. The so-called Bust Up Big Tech Act bars companies like Amazon from selling Amazon-branded products on its own market, where competitors also do business. In a tweet, Hawley said the practice allows Amazon to destroy its competitors. Amazon has said previously that it and other sellers on the platform complement each other and together create a better customer experience. According to a statement from his office, the Bust Up Big Tech Act would also bar Amazon from simultaneously owning a large amount of cloud computing services that other companies use while running its retail business. Arizona Governor Doug Ducey is banning vaccine passports. Arizona joins a handful of other states to bar the passports, and a WHO panel also recommends against them.
Arizona Governor Doug Ducey issued an executive order Monday banning government-mandated vaccine passports. Ducey's order stops state and local governments from requiring proof of a vaccine to enter an area or get services. It does not ban private companies from doing so. Healthcare facilities can still require a person to provide their vaccination status. Schools and daycare centers can also require vaccination documentation. Ducey says he still encourages people to get vaccinated. Arizona joins Florida, Texas, Georgia, and Montana as states that place limits on vaccine passports. The American Civil Liberties Union warns against vaccine passports. They say it violates Americans' right to privacy and that digital apps would only work for people with smartphones. New York State already has a vaccine passport app. So does Orange County in California. People there may need them to get into certain locations or events, such as sporting events or large social gatherings.
For the first time, the Supreme Court is being asked to make the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court's secret rulings public. The Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court was established by Congress in 1978 as part of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. The American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, is joining with other groups in an effort to get access to the court's secret opinions. That's to see if it's violating the First Amendment. There is concern its far-reaching power could have implications for U.S. citizens who are not targets of the government's surveillance. The ACLU believes secret court rulings are dangerous in a democracy, as they allow the government to peer into citizens' private digital lives. In the past, the Supreme Court has turned away previous requests, ruling that this is a matter for the executive branch, not the court to decide. Police are looking for clues for a cause after two men were found dead in a car crash involving a Tesla vehicle. Tesla CEO Elon Musk says his cars are not to blame.
Texas police will serve search warrants on Tesla on Tuesday as they investigate a fatal crash near Houston over the weekend that left two dead. In a tweet, Tesla CEO Elon Musk rejected allegations the vehicle's driving assistance was to blame. He said company checks ruled out use of Tesla's autopilot system. But a senior police officer told Reuters evidence, including witness statements, indicated that nobody was in the driver's seat when the 2019 Tesla Model S crashed into a tree at high speed on Saturday before bursting into flames. Authorities found the bodies of 2 men in the car, one in the front passenger seat and the owner of the car in the back seat. Tesla's autopilot system, which was operating in at least 3 Tesla vehicles involved in fatal US crashes since 2016, has come under increasing scrutiny. The latest crash is the 28th Tesla accident to be investigated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
The State Department is expanding its travel advisories. Americans will soon be discouraged from traveling to 80% of countries worldwide due to the pandemic. The agency said Monday it would update its travel advisories to be more aligned with the CDC's prevention advisories. The list had already featured 34 countries flagged under the Do Not Travel advisory. The latest move will boost that number to roughly 130. The agency's media note said that change isn't because of reassessments of the current virus situations in the countries, but an effort to align guidance with the CDC's assessments. The White House has given no timeline for easing the restrictions. Coming up, startups use 3D printers to construct homes. The companies hope the technology will improve the construction industry's housing shortage. A mining company hopes to extract copper from a small town, giving poor residents massive economic relief. However, their plans may destroy sacred Native American land. Coming up on NTD News. Parler is making a comeback on the Apple App Store next week. Apple approved changes to the app that would allow it back on its devices. Parler's return comes after months of communication between the two companies. The social media company crafted several new safeguards to find posts that aren't protected by the First Amendment. The version of Parler for Apple users will differ from the web-based and Android versions. Apple's version will not show some posts acceptable under Parler policy, but prohibited by Apple. The updated Parler app will become available immediately after the company releases it. One startup is taking on a bold new ambition to help combat U.S. housing shortages. To do it, the company is putting its industrial 3D printers to work. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
3D printing can seemingly build almost anything from the ground up. The process uses autonomous machines to create three-dimensional objects. That's by depositing thin layers of material following digital blueprints. In recent years, 3D printers have been used to produce everything from toys and auto parts to artificial organs and prosthetic limbs. But one startup has a different vision in mind. It aims to use 3D printers, industrial robots, and other technology to help address severe housing shortages.
So what we've done is with 3D printing, we're able to print exactly what we need. So it's effectively zero waste construction, meaning we're eliminating the 3 to 5 pounds per square foot that goes to landfill in a traditional build, which adds up to about 2 to 3 tons of carbon per unit.
In Mighty Building's factory warehouse in Oakland, a 3D printer deposits layers of a white substance onto a base. It quickly hardens under ultraviolet light into a lightweight material that's heat and water resistant. The printer can produce the entire exterior shell of a studio home or individual wall panels that can be easily assembled by hand.
So what we're trying to do is take those really dangerous, difficult parts and hand them to the printer and the robots, and really leverage the humans for the parts that make sense for humans to do, those detail works, the things that robots and computers can't actually do.
Mighty Buildings is now focused on backyard studios and single-family homes, but has plans to produce townhouses and multi-story apartment buildings in the future. To achieve those goals, 3D printing construction firms will need to significantly ramp up production.
Additionally, we're lowering labor hours by about 90% per unit, but at the end of the day, we're actually hoping to create more work by increasing the productivity by as much as 20 times, and also helping address the fact that we don't have enough skilled labor to build all the housing we need.
They'll also have to persuade home buyers, developers, and regulators that they're safe, well-built, and aesthetically pleasing. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A mining company wants to excavate copper from the small town of Superior, Arizona. That'd mean jobs for residents and copper for electric vehicles. but it could mean destruction for land sacred to the local Apache tribe. NTD's Colin Fredrickson reports.
Economic development clashing with Native American religious beliefs. Mining company Rio Tinto hopes to build a massive copper mine in the small town of Superior, Arizona. But some Apaches say this will destroy their sacred land.
No one can take that away from us. Nobody. I don't care who you are. I am bound by our traditional, cultural, and spiritual law to believe there. If I want to go there and be able to pray there, I should have that right. And I don't want no foreign company to come in and tell me, no, you can't do that.
She says it's the land where Apache mountain spirits dwell. Tribe members hold religious ceremonies at the site and bury their ancestors under the volcanic rock.
These kind of places shouldn't be lost, because if it's lost forever, and it'll never come back. And that's what we're trying to preserve and protect.
The mayor of the town hopes the mine will be built, saying electric vehicles need American copper. She's also concerned about her town's economy. Over half of the downtown storefronts are empty.
Now the average income for the town of Superior is about $21,000 a year. These high wage jobs that Resolution Copper will create can bring the average income up to about $101,000 a year.
Resident Darren Lewis invested $800,000 in a hardware store, hoping Rio's planned mine will result in more business. He would be devastated if the mine didn't open.
We put everything we had into this store. Everything. and so we want it to succeed. We want the town to grow.
Rio has already dug an exploratory mine shaft. A manager shows us around, telling us we're about 6,800 feet below the surface on a level that pumps water out.
The other purpose of this level is it gives us a starting point for any future development of the mine.
Rio hopes to negotiate with the tribe as early as June. It wants to achieve maximum effort to seek consent.
We respect that there are some members of the San Carlos Apache tribe that have connections to this land. Then we can refine our plans and look for ways that we can do further avoidance and minimization, again in partnership looking forward with all of the tribes.
President Biden halted Rio's mine plan last month because of Apache complaints, reversing Donald Trump's decision to give Rio the green light. Biden is expected to decide the mine's fate later this spring. Colin Fredrickson, NTD News.
Coming up, if you're looking for a change of scenery, West Virginia might be just the place. The governor says remote workers who move there will get a $12,000 payout. And a Washington state tulip grower talks about business during the pandemic and what it's like now that tulip season is here. That and more here on NTD News.
When the game's over and it's time to go home, sometimes your car has other plans. That's why I drive with CarShield. As expensive as car repairs can be, I wanted the best defense around. And with CarShield's administrators, they make sure that you don't get stuck with expensive car repairs like this. Did I forget to mention that with CarShield's network, I also get 24/7 roadside assistance, towing, and rental car reimbursement included. That's peace of mind every driver needs.
I saved close to $9,000.
If it wasn't for CarShield, I wouldn't have my car.
I gotta tell you, it's quite a relief not to worry about expensive car breakdowns anymore. And with CarShield's administrators, you can choose your favorite mechanic or dealer to do the work. Plus, it's easier than ever to get America's favorite car protection. There's no long-term contracts, and coverage is affordable for every wallet size.
If I didn't have CarShield, I would have been out of pocket $7,000. And as a parent of 3, I couldn't have that.
I trust CarShield administrators because they paid my claim.
Talk about MVP protection for less than the cost of a ball game. Take it from me, the Boomer. Nobody wants to go through the headache of an expensive car breakdown on their own.
If you're driving without a warranty, you have to call CarShield.
Yeah, you do.
So do yourself and your car a favor. Call CarShield. They're your best line of defense against expensive breakdowns.
CarShield administrators paid almost $4,000 for my repairs.
CarShield is wonderful. They saved me $1,300.
With CarShield, I saved $4,100 on my first repair.
Over 1 million happy drivers couldn't be wrong. Call CarShield now.
Protect yourself now against expensive auto repair bills. Call CarShield for a free and instant protection plan quote. Once your car breaks down, it's too late. Call 800-781-2990, 800-781-2990, 800-781-2990.
Pack your bags, because West Virginia will pay you to move there. Governor Jim Justice announced a program called Ascend West Virginia Monday. The program will pay remote workers $12,000 over 2 years if they move to the state. The state promises $10,000 divided into monthly payments for the first year, followed by $2,000 paid at the end of the second year. The package also includes a year's worth of free outdoor recreation, like whitewater rafting and downhill skiing. According to the plan's website, that's worth $20,000. To apply, you must be at least 18 years old with a full-time remote job at a company that is not located in West Virginia. A number of cities and other states have offered similar plans to remote workers, including Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Natchez, Mississippi. More exotic destinations like Aruba have promoted their islands as perfect locations for stay-at-home jobs. The pandemic lockdown has made life hard for many small business owners. While some businesses have shut down, others thrive. A local Washington state farmer tells NTD how his business not only survived, but grew in these difficult times.
Andrew Miller is the CEO of Tulip Town. He and his new business are welcoming their second Tulip Festival this April in Mount Vernon, Washington. Business couldn't be better.
The season is going really, really well. Now we're really excited. We've sold over 75,000 tickets so far for this season, and it's been phenomenal.
Miller is one of the major tulip growers in Washington. He expects a big increase in revenue this year.
Oh, I bet we double that before the end of the season. I would be surprised if we don't see 150,000 people out here this year, which would be 50,000 people more than any other year.
Miller decided to leave a high-tech job to move back to his hometown. That's because he sees great potential in growing tulips.
I'm absolutely certain that agriculture is a part of the future of Skagit Valley. And so we chose to purchase Tulip Town because tulips are iconic for Skagit Valley.
Then something unexpected happened.
And then we ran into the COVID-19, which hit us hard, very hard. 95% of our revenue, went away just like that.
But Miller, the former Amazon crisis manager and an Air Force intelligence officer, knows how to handle crises.
And we really focused on ways that we could connect our customers and our guests virtually, and ways that we could export tulips, which we never had to do before. So we sold tulips online.
Miller also sells photography passes. He offers visitors a more immersive experience through different innovative measures.
So I think the most innovative that we have done from an operational perspective is in the field, where we designed the field this year so that people could get out closer to the flowers. On the technical side, of course, we have really leaned into the online ticketing and advertising via social media, which of course we had done before.
Miller not only accepted donations, but also donated the tulips to hospitals, nursing homes, and memory care facilities. As Miller says, it's not about the tulips or business, it's always about the people.
If I were to boil my business model and the mission of our farm is to connect. It's to connect people. It brings people together. It connects them to nature. It connects them to themselves. But the one thing that they have in common is a connection.
Okay, great. California is predicting a larger crop of strawberries this year as demand for the fruit increases. NTD's Eileen Eng hears more from a strawberry farmer.
To keep up with an increased demand for strawberries, farmers planted more strawberries last fall and forecast a larger crop this year. According to a report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, California produces about 90% of the nation's strawberries year-round. The majority are harvested between March and October. The demand for strawberries increased last year when the pandemic started and remained high.
We believe that is due to consumers are looking for healthy foods or putting more healthy foods in their diets. And they're also looking for foods that can boost their immunity. And strawberries, as it turns out, are high in vitamin C. And a serving of strawberries has as much vitamin C as an orange.
Most of California's strawberries are grown along the coast, from Ventura to Santa Cruz. Harvest season varies by region. Here at Berry Island Farms in Gilroy, the strawberries are ripening. The farm will be open to the public for you pick soon on a first-come, first-served basis. Ronald Wilton has been farming here for 7 years. He grows blackberries, tomatoes, cabbages, carrots, and more. His main focus is on strawberries.
We were able to open up, and we had a very busy season last year because, like I said, people with children, they love to come out on a Saturday morning and pick their own strawberries, pick their own tomatoes. I'll be guiding them around on the farm so they learn about farming.
He only grows the Monterey variety. It is very sweet and has a shorter shelf life. But Wilton is not concerned about that because he can offer the berries directly to local restaurants, you-pick, and farmers markets. His strawberry season starts from April and can go all the way to Thanksgiving in November. He expects a big crowd this year too and gives advice on how to pick strawberries.
Always use 2 hands, hold the stem and then kind of twist off the berry. Don't pull the berries because you'll pull the plant out of the ground, especially with children. That is important. And my biggest advice is do the taste testing because you want to do the quality control right here in the field.
His strawberries are certified organic, and he does not use pesticides. Welton says he works in harmony with nature for mutual benefit. Turkeys roam around to eat snails and other bugs and leave the fruits. Eventually, he hopes to be open year-round by setting up a shed to sell fresh produce, jams, honey, and salsa. Eileen Eng, NTD News, California.
Coming up, Cuba's ruling Communist Party chooses a new leader, but he's not a member of the Castro family. Some like the choice of a younger leader. Others say not much will change. And a team of mostly Chinese scientists have created the first ever human-monkey embryo. They tried to create monkeys engineered with human-like body parts, but the experiment failed. That and more here on NTD News. Cuba has turned the page on the Castro era. On Monday, the ruling Communist Party elected President Miguel Diaz-Canel to replace Raul Castro, although the new party chief says he will continue to consult Castro on strategic decisions.
Cuba's Communist Party elected a new leader on Monday, putting an end to the Castro era that's ruled the island nation since its 1959 revolution. President Miguel Diaz-Canel will step in for Raul Castro, the brother of revolutionary leader Fidel Castro. Diaz-Canel said Castro will still be consulted on strategic decisions. Fidel and Raul Castro ruled Cuba for 6 decades after leading a communist revolution in 1959. Diaz-Canel now assumes the highest position in government as first party secretary. Some Havana residents applauded the handover, saying Diaz-Canel represented a younger generation. Others doubted much would change.
The only thing that's going to happen is that the Castros are gone. For me, it will be the same thing.
Diaz-Canel has emphasized continuity of the country's one-party socialist system, amid pressure to undertake economic reforms.
In an overwhelming 418-1 vote, the House of Representatives passed a resolution that condemns the Chinese Communist regime's continued trampling of freedoms in Hong Kong. The chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee said the resolution was intended to send a strong bipartisan message to Chinese and Hong Kong authorities to respect the will of the Hong Kong people. Republican Congressman Michael McCall said Americans are united in standing with Hong Kongers. The resolution comes days after 9 prominent Hong Kong pro-democracy activists were sentenced to prison for anti-Beijing protests held in 2019. The U.S., Japan, and Australia are planning to lay new undersea cables in the Pacific Ocean. This will allow the 3 countries to share information more efficiently and help them counter Beijing. NTD's Tiffany Meyer brings us more.
The U.S., Japan, and Australia are joining forces on a new major project. The nations plan to lay new submarine cables in the Pacific Ocean, according to Japanese media Yomiuri News. The move seems to strengthen global digital infrastructure and will allow the 3 countries to share information more efficiently. The increased communication will likely help the allies combat Beijing. Currently, 90% of submarine cables are owned by entities based in the U.S., Japan, and Europe. But China's submarine manufacturer HMN Tech comes in at number 4 in the world. The company is owned by controversial telecom giant Huawei. Huawei's ties to the Chinese regime have prompted concerns about using HMNN tech gear. Some warn that information transmitted via the Chinese-owned lines may be intercepted or obscured. Officials from the U.S., Japan, and Australia met with related companies in March to discuss the project. All parties agreed to strengthen cooperation. They also put forward a plan to co-finance construction of the submarine cables in areas of strategic importance. Expanding these cable lines is also part of the Chinese regime's Belt and Road Initiative, especially around the Pacific Islands. The area is known to have friendly relations with Taiwan. The Belt and Road is Beijing's main infrastructure project, known for partnering with foreign countries and funding overseas construction projects. Critics say the program aims to spread Beijing's influence by trapping developing countries in debt. Much of the submarine expansion effort is carried out by Chinese companies, not central authorities. Many believe the regime hands out subsidies to domestic companies, allowing them to take bids at lower prices and unfairly compete with foreign competitors. Chinese and U.S. researchers recently created the first human monkey embryo in the world, but the experiment has also raised some ethical concerns. Over 20 scientists took part in the experiment. 17 of them work at China's Kunming University of Science and Technology. The other 3 are from the U.S. and Spain. The lead scientist, Hao Tang, reportedly said they did the experiment in China. That's because monkey embryos are expensive and rare, but they could be found in China. And such experiments can't be funded with U.S. federal research dollars. The team put human stem cells into monkey embryos. Their plan was to create monkeys born with human-like body parts. Data shows thousands of U.S. patients die each year while waiting for organ transplants. These scientists believe if the experiment succeeds, those patients might be able to survive. But the experiment failed. Most of the embryos died shortly afterwards, and the rest were destroyed within 3 weeks. The experiment has raised difficult ethical questions. U.S. media NPR says the biggest concern is that someone can make a baby out of an embryo made this way. Some critics worry that human cells can become part of the brain of the resulting animal. Rice University's Kirsten Matthews says it is difficult to regulate the new creature once it's born. Should it be treated as a human or an animal? Another concern is that using human cells this way could potentially produce animals with human sperm or eggs. Stanford University's bioethicist Hank Greeley says nobody wants monkeys walking around with human eggs or sperm inside of them.
Beijing has been flexing its muscles at Taiwan, but is the Chinese regime really going to invade the democratic island? A Japanese expert explains. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
After the Japanese Prime Minister's visit to the U.S., many believe that Japan is now taking a harder stance against Beijing. But a Japanese expert holds a different view.
Japanese politicians are just trying to showcase a tough stance on China, but there's not much action. In terms of politics, Japan is with the United States, but in terms of the economy, Japan has intricate ties with China.
Shibuya says China is still a huge market for Japan. About 1,700 Japanese companies operating in China have applied for Japanese government aid to relocate. But that's only about 5% of the 30,000 Japanese companies in China. Shibuya also believes Beijing is unlikely to overtake Taiwan by force, because the Chinese regime would prefer to win a war without actual military confrontation. That means subverting an enemy through various other means.
Such as spreading disinformation in the enemy state, sending bribes or setting up honey traps. They create a state of chaos in the enemy state. That's exactly what they're good at.
He also thinks for Beijing, a war on Taiwan means a war on the U.S. The United States never committed to protecting Taiwan in the case of a Chinese invasion. But Secretary of State Antony Blinken also said that the Biden administration would make sure Taiwan has the ability to defend itself.
I don't think China wants to see a war between the US and China. That's because China has too few allies.
Shibuya says in the case of an invasion, U.S. allies such as Japan and Australia are likely to come to the rescue. But he doesn't believe Russia would support the Chinese regime. As for Iran and Pakistan, it's unclear if they would show support, but he thinks these countries wouldn't want to get involved in a war.
The Chinese side basically has no allies, but the American and Taiwanese side has quite a few allies that will support them. No matter how you look at it, the Chinese side is in an unfavorable situation.
He adds that Taiwan also has the ability to strike back. The island has missiles that are able to strike China's Three Gorges Dam. And if the dam collapses, it could release enough water to submerge the cities downstream. The area downstream has a dense population and is a major part of China's economy. So China could suffer huge damage from Taiwan's missile attack. This is why Shibuya thinks a war on Taiwan isn't an easy choice for Beijing. Juliet Song, NTD News.
German researchers release remarkable video footage of the European honeybee. Cameras record life inside the hive and offer new insights into the little bees. A boat that can almost fly over a lake in the Alps hopes to define the future of boating. That and more on NTD News.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical. So I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too big to fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of the Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 866-239-2619.
Soccer authorities, fans, and political leaders are condemning a move on Sunday by 12 of Europe's top soccer clubs to launch a breakaway Super League. It's set to rival the Union of European Football's established Champions League competition. NTD's Neil Woodrow brings the details.
Manchester United, Real Madrid, Juventus and Chelsea are among the 12 founding clubs of the Football Super League. But UEFA are threatening to ban them from playing in any other competition at domestic, European or world level, and have vowed to fight the move. The clubs involved in a statement say the global pandemic has accelerated the instability in the existing European football economic model, and there is a need to provide higher quality matches and additional financial resources for the overall football pyramid. Soccer authorities, fan organisations and politicians across Europe have heavily criticised the breakaway. European soccer's governing body UEFA holding a crisis meeting on Monday. In a statement it says it would consider all measures available to us at all levels, both judicial and sporting, in order to prevent this happening, and that it will ban participating clubs from domestic, European and international competition. In response, the Super League club says they would take legal steps in unnamed courts to protect their interests as they set up the league. Prime Minister Boris Johnson is not a fan of the new league.
We're going to look at everything that we can do with the football authorities to make sure that this doesn't go ahead in the way that it's currently being proposed. I don't think that it is good news for fans. I don't think it's good news for football in this country.
The chief executive of Football Supporters Europe says they were expecting this, but couldn't predict the scope of it.
I think it is more despicable. It is more of a greedy power grab than we ever expected. And they claim that they do it in the interest of football. They claim that they do it in the interest of everyone. They even claim that this is a response to the challenges of the pandemic. What they only really do is endanger the economic model of football and put every single club in Europe in danger.
Soccer's world governing body FIFA had warned in January that it would not recognise a breakaway league and that it would ban players who took part in it from featuring in the World Cup. However, on Sunday it seemed to have lowered its tone to mere disapproval of a closed European breakaway league and with no mention of sanctions. For the moment, fans are not in favour.
When you take a league and you make it a bit of a closed shop, it's just completely unfair. It defeats the point of competitive football. It's like the idea that you make the Premier League a kind of American-style league where there's no relegation, there's no promotion. It's just ridiculous. I don't think European clubs who have history in Europe should be able to rest on that history going forwards.
There is obviously a big financial issue surrounding this.
Businesses have involved themselves in football much more frequently, and we've seen the increase of the size of the Premier League and of European competition. With that, we've seen bigger commercial deals, some sponsorship endorsements, players, of course, getting paid so much more money. And that naturally makes it a more attractive competition to invest in.
JP Morgan on Monday said that it was providing the financing. The founding clubs will be given €3.5 billion to, quote, support their infrastructure investment plans and to offset the impact of the COVID pandemic. The Super League announcement comes as UEFA on Monday approves reforms to expand the Champions League to 36 teams instead of the current 32 and to introduce a league instead of groups. It's a move which had received criticism from some fans prior to its approval. Neil Woodrow, NTD News, Stamford Bridge Football Ground, London.
The iconic home of Henry VIII and other British monarchs is hosting its first ever Tulip Festival. The event aims to bring back visitors and help recover over $100 million in pandemic-related losses. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
Spring has arrived at Hampton Court Palace, and this year the palace is hosting its first Tulip Festival. It's being held in one of the most unusual areas on the grounds, the Lower Orangery Garden. Graham Dillamore, Deputy Head Gardener for Historic Royal Palaces, is inspecting the flower beds there.
We've got these wonderful species tulips, Pratens, in this sort of orange, lovely golden orange and this bright red. And they love this south-facing wall. It's lovely and warm, and the bulbs like that because they like to get nice and warm in the spring.
Tulips have been cultivated at the palace since Queen Mary II's reign in the 1690s. Back then, one tulip bulb cost as much as a car today. Here, some of the same historic varieties that kings and queens enjoyed centuries ago are still growing. Preparations for the festival began in summer 2020. After planning the displays, gardeners prepared the soil and improved drainage where necessary. Then they added organic material to give the bulbs the nutrients needed to develop. After the bulbs were delivered in the fall, Dillamore and his team started digging.
We planted over 105,000 tulips. And believe you me, after you've planted that many tulips, you need to go and see the osteopath. But the gardeners team here have done absolutely amazing job to plant that many tulips. In about September, October, about the best time to plant them.
The UK is slowly emerging from its latest lockdown, and there are hopes visitor numbers will start to bloom again. The Hampton Court Palace Tulip Festival runs until May 3rd. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
German researchers have released remarkable videos revealing what life is like inside a honey beehive. The study comes as the crucial pollinators fight against extinction. We go back to NTD's Andrew Thomas for the story.
Spring has arrived, and honeybees are hard at work gathering nectar. The European honeybee is a social insect that lives in colonies. They have been used by beekeepers for centuries to help pollinate crops and for their sweet honey. German scientists have now captured a unique glimpse into the bee's hidden world with cameras inside a section of honeycomb. The footage revealed a queen laying her egg, mouth-to-mouth feeding of larvae by worker bees, pollen storage, and even cannibalism.
I think this is a very important step for the 21st century because we can share videos so easily via the internet, and this is such a great possibility for beekeepers and for scholars or the public in general to learn about bees.
According to the UN, almost 35% of all invertebrate pollinators, particularly bees and butterflies, are facing extinction. At the same time, about 90% of the world's wild-flowering plant species, more than 75% of the world's food crops, and 35% of global agricultural land depend on pollination. Seifert describes honeybees as a symbol of a healthy ecosystem.
The honeybee is more or less a symbol for ecological awareness. And I would say this is one of the most important things in honeybee research, to look at it as a model organism.
The UN says between $235 billion and nearly $580 billion worth of annual global food production relies directly on pollinators. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A boat that can almost fly is making waves on a lake in the Alps. An all-electric vessel is hoping to define the future of boating. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story.
When the boat's pilot pushes the throttle, his vessel almost takes off like an airplane.
So we're using about 25 horsepower now at a speed of 20 knots. And a normal boat will consume about 100 or 120 horsepower at this speed.
The Sweden-based company's new Candela 7 electric boat uses hydrofoils. They act like underwater wings, lifting the boat's hull up into the air and reducing water surface friction by about 80%. That makes it possible to cruise long distances on battery power alone.
Flying boats have been around for a century, and they have been pretty popular, but they also had drawbacks because the foils protrude quite a bit and you can't retract them.
But Candela's design solves those problems. With the use of modern technology used in drones and smartphones, Candela 7 can sail on lakes and rough seas. Sensors on the bow of the boat detect waves.
If you would have made this boat 25 years ago, it would probably have cost you 15 million euros to buy.
Now the boat costs about $300,000. The Candela 7 also comes with a smartphone app, so owners can track their journey, the vessel's battery life, and control music and lighting.
The big difference is that this boat is 95% cheaper to operate, so it's basically free to cruise on electricity.
He added that cruising for an entire day costs less than $10. Malberg has high hopes on his boat design.
So we think this is the future of boating. This is how boats will look like in the future.
While the Candela 7 is the Swedish startup's first product, the company aims to use its foiling technology on ferries and ships as big as 200 feet long. Candela plans to launch a ferry near Stockholm in 2022 that can carry up to 30 passengers. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
And dramatic video footage shows the moment a brave railway worker in India risks his life to save a child who fell onto train tracks. 1 second later, and the outcome could have been very different. CCTV footage shows a child walking along a train platform with a woman. The child then falls onto the tracks below and tries to pull himself up as a train quickly approaches. The railway worker sprints over, lifts the child up before getting out of danger himself. The worker told the Free Press Journal that the woman was visually impaired, so she couldn't help the boy. The Ministry of Railways awarded the worker the equivalent of just over $650 for his brave act. And that's all for now. You can catch the news again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. I'm Steve Lance, in for Kevin Hogan.
have a new channel. Subscribe to us on YouTube at NTD News. Get the highlights of our news broadcast and the most important headlines that we curate especially for you.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to newsletter.ntd.com to sign up for our evening newsletter.